Thanks for coming. This is the last artist talk and workshop of Craftwork. Craftwork has been a several months long series of artist talks and workshops exploring the intersection between art and craft and everything that lies between, around, above, and below those two things. It's culminating in a gallery show. Our opening is this Saturday, April 12th, and I'm going to pass around some postcards. Feel free to take a couple, leave them in your favorite neighborhood coffee shop. Give them to your friends. Come. It's going to be a really, really incredible show. Tonight we're having what should have been the first panel, but thanks to the polar vortex is the last. Talking about art and craft and community activism and politics. And we have two really amazing artists and teachers and community organizers, Thelma, Uranga, and Nicole Marroquin. And they're going to be here tonight talking about their own work and work that inspires them or that they've collaborated on. But just to give a little bit of a framework, I wanted to talk about briefly some of the things that we were thinking about when we organized this panel. So I brought a couple of slides with me. And when we think about sort of work that spans the divide between art and craft and how it intersects with politics, I think there are a couple of pieces that immediately spring to mind. The first one for me is the AIDS quilt, which began in San Francisco during the AIDS crisis. During a vigil and protest for people who had died, they began posting the names of people who had died of AIDS onto the wall of City Hall in San Francisco because they felt like these names wouldn't be remembered, weren't being marked, weren't being acknowledged. And that eventually grew into a quilt project which had huge national impact, still tours today, and played a very large role in putting a face to the AIDS crisis and moving policy, I think, in a substantial way, although there could be a much longer discussion about that. Another piece I wanted to bring in to sort of frame this discussion is Judy Chicago's The Dinner Party. And this was a mixed media piece which involved embroidered runners and ceramic dishes representing women, important women in history. And it came out of the feminist art movement. Nora did a really great job of talking about sort of where it fit in these questions earlier, but I'm going to try and rephrase her. But this was a very explicit moment where female artists were really reclaiming craft techniques in the mainstream art world in a way that was explicitly feminist and explicitly about representing the work and impact and importance of women and women's work. And I think I organizing this, I also thought a lot about local work or, work I've run into here in Chicago that made me think about the way these works can move communities or make statements. There's a really amazing quilter an activist named Dorothy Burge. She's done a lot of incredible quilts, but a piece that she's working on right now is the Juvenile Life Without Parole quilt. And it's silhouettes of youth who were sentenced to life without parole. And it includes their name, their age when they were sentenced, and 3 words that they would use to describe their good qualities. So you can see a couple of panels for this. It'll hopefully be showing around the city this fall. But I think she is a really great example, and she has tons more projects with that, about bringing quilting to her work as a prison abolition activist, as a racial justice activist. She's worked on quilts in the juvenile detention center with youth who were there that she had to do entirely with spray adhesive because they couldn't bring in scissors or needles to work on the youth there. And she's really using this very feminine art to address these really heavy subjects. And another piece that made me think about this was a piece that was recently at the MCA. This is untitled Pink Tube, and it's 2 gay men who have been simultaneously crocheting this pink tube for the last 10 years. They work from both ends. They're in a relationship with each other, and tube sort of represents what it means to be artists who collaborate, their relationship, the longer they work, the farther they get from each other. And I think it has a lot to say about sort of the visibility of queer relationships and taking that relationship and the length and depth of it into the public sphere. They work on it, that's them on, the museum steps working on it. They work on it around the gallery while it's installed. And I think there's a lot of really great work going around particularly marginalized communities that have a hard time controlling their own representation in popular culture and the art world in general, using craft to sort of bring forward their own ways of seeing themselves in their communities. So with that in mind, we invited Thelma and Nicole here because they're both artists who are doing really exciting work around community. They're both based out of Pilsen, and they're really using their work in art and craft to sort of build community and address issues of power and race and class in their own neighborhoods through their work. So I'm really excited to hear from them and have them talk about their work. Yay! Thelma, I'm making you go first. This is Thelma.
Hi. I am one part of one of the founders of El Stitchibich. We started back in 2008. And actually, so back then I was living in Cicero. I was freshly graduated from college. I studied photography, and I learned how to knit my last year. And so I was really looking to connect with other crafters, and I think also specifically other Latina crafters, because I was going to craft fairs and reading Handmade Nation, and I felt like I wasn't really seeing a lot of people out there that looked like myself. And so we naturally gravitated towards Pilsen. It was an easy kind of middle spot for everybody back then. And I think it just helped really create visibility of who we were and what we were doing. We were definitely, people were seeing us and they were making the grandmother jokes. And so we were just basically out to tell everybody that, there was kind of a new face on crafting. And so because of our visibility, we got to do a lot of really cool art projects. We started with knit graffiti, but we met a lot of people that wanted to learn how to knit. And so early on, one of the opportunities that we had a small grant to buy knit and crochet kits. And so we were meeting a lot of women that were looking to make a little extra money. And so we got to teach a lot of people how to knit. I want to say at this point, we've taught like hundreds of people how to knit, which is really exciting. And then I think for a lot of us, it was a part of our culture. And so we were really looking to connect with that as well. I think almost everybody that I've met was really talking about that somebody in their family passed it down to them or somebody in their family was doing it. And so because of some of the art projects we've done some ofrendas for the museum, the National Museum of Mexican Art. And so the other really cool part is because, I feel like collaboration and community has always been at the heart of what we're doing. And so it was really about just learning how to, work with each other, plugging into everybody's talents, and also training people who didn't study art to make art. So it kind of had this like folk art quality, which was really great. And I also work at Elevarte Community Studio.
Sorry,
No, it's okay.
Go back and...
I know, I'm seeing the slides and I'm, thinking of all this stuff. And so I also teach a fiber arts program there, which is called Tejer y Poder, and which loosely translates to knit power. And I think, these youth are coming from all over the city. They're seeing a ton of different issues happening in their communities. And I think I'll probably talk about it a little bit more later, but the quilt that we're making specifically for this piece, for this show, which is about the killings that are happening all over Chicago and the violence that these youth are especially seeing. And so I think during the summer I was really following the whole story of Trayvon Martin because I just felt so concerned about it, and I felt like it could have been any one of my youth. And so, and I definitely wanted to give them that space to talk about it and to react to it and to make art about it. So, yeah.
Yay!
I can go on forever.
Okay, we're gonna have a brief pause where we hook up Nicole's computer, and then Nicole is gonna talk about her work. Here you go. Yes.
Oh, you come prepared.
I know. That's how
We've
she
loaded
rolls.
it. Well, sometimes. On occasion. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
Oh well, there's an aspect ratio issue. Oh, perfect. Oh no, I was just getting confused. Just gonna be happy again. Here we go.
Look at how easy that was.
I know.
It's never
There you
that
go.
easy.
Yeah, I'm Nicole, and I usually work in collaborative groups, and this is a graphic we didn't get to use. My friend Eric Garcia made it. He's just like a fountain flowing with art. But we did a project called A Day Without Public Art in Pilsen, and he did the graphic on the right too. And it was like, well, the idea was that we would combine like that. It would be a day without a Mexican with a day without art. So the day without a Mexican. Has anybody here seen it? Sorry, I'm a teacher. I'm always asking people to raise their hands. Well, if you haven't seen it, you should go see it. A big pink fog comes and eats up all the Mexicans, and chaos ensues. And it's in California. It's a comedy. And A Day Without Art is a day that started in 1988 to commemorate artists who died of AIDS, and people will cover. I mean, some museums are still doing it. People cover up the mural, the artwork, and then I'm also thinking about. Well, aren't we in it right now? Yes, covering up during Lent, during the Passion Week, right? Covering up the statues in order to concentrate on the meaning of them, right? So covering things up in order to think about them. Also, we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of the Wall of Respect. Really big deal. First community mural ever painted in the country was right here in Chicago, not far away. So there's a lot of big deals going on in Pilsen. That's a parent fighting to save La Casita.
He's not a parent.
Oh,
But
he's
he's
not
a
a parent?
community activist.
Oh, was he one of the arrested?
Yeah, it's Alfredo.
Awesome.
I love that picture.
I know, right? But it's like, so it's visceral stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then I wish I put the other one up, but this is the mural that's on the side where Yellow Cali was, but Yellow Cali is not there anymore, right? And then somebody spray painted "Mexicans are racist" on it, and I was like, this is an important moment. So then also too, there's this big, huge, city funded or alderman funded mural project that's going on, which is cool, but it's also meaning that politicians are curating some of the murals, and that really is rubbing a lot of important muralists the wrong way. And so anyway, we thought we would just like attack from all sides, many-headed Hydra style. You chop off a head, you want to start again. I mean, that's what graffiti artists are doing. They're doing a lot of pretty significant damage to a bunch of these, cool street art pieces that are going up. Anyway, so what we decided to do is cover stuff up, and one of the most important things to do was to work with the artists that painted the murals, work with the youth who were working on the streets. And so, of course, Hector Duarte's house was the first place to go, and it took about a year and a half talking to him, and then talking to other people through him, right? And so, of course, we started at like 6 at night. It was dark in half an hour, and we were up on 3-story ladders in the dark. But that was pretty exciting stuff. About 40 people showed up, I think, because it was really dark. And then we ended up covering up. I mean, it's a collective of women, 5 of us that were working together, and then we ended up bringing in a lot more people. I think close to, including the people that did the silk screening and the ladder, people driving around with ladders, like everybody all together was like almost 70 people.
Wow.
So yeah, there was everybody from high school aged youth to people in undergraduate school who got together. We had uniforms, really high ladders. Like too scary to do. This is right before the sunset, and we were halfway done, and it just went. And a lot of people got to cover up their own murals, and a lot of youth painted murals. And actually, you know what started to happen when I was looking at these like a week ago? Because this happened in November 2013. What happened was I started to realize there was a bunch of women covering up paintings of women. But anyway, except for this, is Joan Sebastian, and the muralist who painted it was saying that, he used to live in Pilsen, and he's like this super international famous crooner, right? Like my mom's age women are just like fanatical over him. But he was super broke and used to live on and play guitar on the street at the corner of Ashland and 21st, right? And he worked at that grocery store. Yeah, he was a butcher there, right there on Wood Street. Anyway, that one got pulled down in the night. That banner got ripped down because my husband warned me. He was like, people are not going to go for you covering up this guy. He's like the guy who made it. People want to make him, you know? Another one that got ripped down was the one of Jeff Jr., the mural of Jeff Jr., Jeff who was killed, partially painted by his father, who's a muralist, Jeff Sr., and Maldonado. And while we were putting it up, a guy walked by and said, you know that kid's a saint. And I was like, this covering is not going to last. That was part of what we were investigating, you know. We wanted to know what these murals meant. We wanted to know if anybody cared. I mean, it was actually like asking a question, right? So, you know, Casas Lana's gone, sold. The building's there. We don't know how for much longer. It's totally condemned and shut down. The building has been sold. People got to cover up murals that they were involved in painting. It was real exciting for the youth. Some of them kind of went off-road and didn't have permission to do some stuff. So what I took from, I mean, they were up in the CTA doing things. I was like, oh no. But what I took from it was that, I mean, myself as an artist, you know, I only can stand working outdoors lately. And my work is enriched by collaboration. There's a lot of stories that haven't been told. That mural of Boogie with the red splash of paint there, he was a community hero trying to stop the gang wars. It was painted like 25 years ago. We still don't have any sort of writing about this. You know, the guy who painted it's still around. And it was real dangerous, so it was exciting. There was lightning and it was really windy, but this was the greatest thing, multi-generational teamwork. And then, you know, I'm a clay person, just so you know. Like, a lot of my time is spent staring at a piece of dirt in my lap, quietly, by myself. So, yeah, when you were talking about craft, I thought, I got something to say about that. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Awesome.
Cool. Marathon. 6 minutes.
So we're gonna sit at the big imposing table. I've got a couple of questions to start us off, but then we're gonna open the floor off to you guys. We're all very smart and have feelings about
Yes.
words to go with the feelings. Words.
Should I unplug or replug yours or?
No, there's no more.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. Go this way.
Here, I'll let you sit in the middle so that.
Oh, cool. Thank you. It's all right. It's page paper. Oh, nice. Oh, wow. So pretty. Sit here and breathe wine on you.
So, you know, both of you guys touched about this a little bit in your introductions, but you're both living and working in Pilsen. The Day Without Public Art definitely had a lot to do with Pilsen, but you also are an artist who teaches both at the School of the Art Institute and at Elevarte sometimes. So I'd like to look at sort of Pilsen as an example of where this intersection between art, community, and politics is happening. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about sort of what that looks like in your experience in the neighborhood.
Okay. I have all these like scribbles. Well, yeah, it's so like where to even start? Like regarding El Stitchy Bitch, I feel like we're really just trying to create that space for us. I think we were looking at groups like Proyecto Latina, who back then they really kind of just helped us move along because they had an online space where they were highlighting Latinas in the arts. And so we were both kind of at the same time going towards the same direction. God, there's just so much to say.
I know,
I'm having
right?
a hard time.
Well, do you want me to go for a while?
Go for a while.
Because I was going to say, one of the things that when I look at the work, the images, and the things that you were talking about in this context, because I've been talking a lot about like public art, and not so much about collaboration or feminism or the role of, sitting together as much. And there's this really important thing that's happening, right, where you can't do community work if you don't cool it, sit down, listen. Listening, huge part, right? And through my research, I've kind of come to find that's what I have to work on. No, but I mean, it's a massive skill. That's not part of what you're taught when you're learning about like making art necessarily. But there's something to be said about slowing down, and I think that's what making or collaborating or the combination really brings added bonus.
Yeah, I definitely had to learn that when we were starting because, like I said, I was fresh out of art school. I was working on my own, and then suddenly I was working with a group of people who had so many different ideas. And so it's just really about learning how to ask the right questions, how to see a different way of doing it. Because I remember there was this one time we were all installing, and I was like, I don't want it like that. And I was like the only one with the sour face, and then I kind of had to check myself, and I was like, okay, this is how it's going to work. So, I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I feel like, I'm going to say bad stuff about art school.
Do it. Yeah. That's what this
I
space
work
is
in
for.
one.
Yeah.
Right, but like, there's still, I mean, you'd think it'd be gone by now after all these years of Sesame Street talking about collaboration and working together and cooperation. But like, no, we're still talking about this Art Star thing. Like, I'm going to discover this thing, and then I'm going to be there. It's like, I thought that was gone, but it's like, seems to still be around.
Yeah.
Kind of a drag. I was surprised, because it doesn't seem like there's that much, not that much left to do in that arena, One Hit Wonders and stuff. But, I mean, there's so much work that needs to be done through conversation and talking between generations, and that's what I wish I knew how to knit.
Well, actually, thinking about Pilsen and, creating this space, and I was thinking about it on the way here because we were creating a space for us, and we were also creating a space so that we wouldn't have to drive to the north side. I feel like that's what's happening in Pilsen and Bridgeport, and, I find that when I was a lot younger, to go anywhere cool, to go any of the cool bars, I had to travel to the north side, and now I don't have to. And so, I mean, it's both a good and a bad thing. And I feel also that the work that we're doing at Elevarte with our youth, and we have youth that come all the way from Hyde Park to Pilsen because they love our programming, and we're giving them that space to work. And we're a youth development organization, and so we're really just working to empower them through the arts and to give them that voice.
Well, and Elevarte is like the last community arts organization in Pilsen, right?
Yeah. Right.
And do you sort of feel the impact of that on your work or on your...
Yeah, I feel like we're doing a million things, basically. And we're a very small staff, and we are just like trying to hit everything all at once. We're trying to offer programs for the teeny tiny ones, for the teenagers, giving them internships and job opportunities in the summer. And, we're even talking about starting adult programming because we're really starting to get a demand for that. And so that's what I'm excited about.
And do you want to talk briefly? You should plug Elevarte real briefly about what your main programs are because they're awesome.
Okay. So for the little ones, year-round we do clay. We've had this circus program forever, and it's so fun to just see them perform and juggle and balance on this huge ball and stuff like that. One of the big things we do in the summer is the We Are Hip Hop Festival, which is completely youth run. And so now it's actually two programs, one program that does the promotions and then the other program that organizes the whole event. And it's just so cool to see the teens take ownership of that. In the fall, we do Dia de Muertos real big. We take it to the streets. We have puppets and walking ofrendas and street level ofrendas, and it's really awesome. And then in the spring, we've been doing Carnaval. So,
Lots of public stuff.
Yes.
How have you, both of you have been involved personally and witnessed sort of quote-unquote socially engaged art, which is a whole other conversation. But can you talk about a little bit about the sort of pitfalls and possibilities of socially engaged art, and as you've seen it or as you've participated in it?
Yeah, I was just I was talking about it with Elvia, who is involved. Also working on Day Without Public Art in Pilsen and Stitch. Oh, right on.
Both
right.
teams.
Yeah. And this is the thing is like, you know, socially engaged art, even in this particular community, has been going on for a long time. And it's arguable that that doesn't include murals. I mean, I kind of think it does in a way. And especially the parade stuff, whatever the parade, public interaction, processions. And there's a conversation going on now about, you know, socially engaged art that's colonizing community arts. And I was talking to somebody about this recently, and I was like, well, I mean, it maybe it would like to, but it takes too long to get to know people and to, you know, engage in an authentic way. People aren't having it. Like people are, I mean, yeah, you gotta be present, and you have to participate in the community you're engaged in. I think that would be the pitfall for the version that I think people are trying to, you know, get rapid, you know, results. And that's the other problem with socially engaged art is you don't know what's going to happen. You throw out something into the universe, or you and several people do, or you catch something, and you aren't sure what could happen. It's like perfect for working with youth.
Well, yeah. So I would say so. We're the quilt that we're doing for this show, which was total collaboration. So we're doing a map of Chicago, and we're separating it by neighborhoods. And so Rachel was really awesome and was able to get the list of people who died in every neighborhood. And so we're really talking about contrasting, you know, some neighborhoods that are not seeing any violence, that like you will see neighborhoods that have no names versus like the neighborhoods that you can't even fit all the names, that they're not even readable anymore. And so I just kind of like, you know, sit around and think about it, and I'm wondering, like, is this enough? You know, the same with my youth. Like the first summer that we taught the Heri Poder, we almost did like a performance or like a sit-in, and so we sat at these 6 corners in Pilsen, which is like Blue Island, Loomis, 18th Street, and I'm like, it's just 3 streets. So
6
and,
corners.
and so they were all knitting. They basically decided that they wanted to knit with the same color of yarn, which was white. And then everybody, whatever they made that day, we took it back and we created this peace flag. And so they were just really reacting to the violence in that neighborhood, the violence in their neighborhoods. And then, and so you guys also saw the Trayvon Martin banners that we made. And so, you know, it's like you're giving them a voice, but then at the same time, I just find myself worrying and also connecting to them. You know, like I grew up in Cicero. It also wasn't the best neighborhood, but I also wasn't really dealing with my friends dying and being shot outside of school. And, you know, it's just starting to get nice outside in Pilsen. And you see this riot, like these 2 contrasting sides. And, you know, like we had a crazy winter. And so violence was like way down. And now it's just like going way up. And it's really scary. Yeah.
They're investigating the underreporting
Right.
violent
Yeah.
crime now too.
We have we're adding names to the quilt because there were names that were left off
Really?
by the police department. You didn't want to raise the murder statistics.
Yeah, there's motive.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to add a little bit to what Thelma said about sort of both the possibilities and pitfalls. Like, the idea from this quilt came from, I think, a very emotional place from all of us. We had a previous group project that we had worked on had been Day of the Dead stuff, so honoring our dead through the process of knitting and embroidery, but then wanting to sort of process the city's dead in this larger way and think about each name having value and take that time. But as it went on, and I think that's one of the scary things about sort of putting yourself out there and engaging with these bigger issues, is you're like, we were talking to a reporter who does homicide reporting, and she was like, I know these names, like I've met these families, I want to invite them to the opening, which is amazing, but also really scary, because you're like, we should have done more to like reach, you know, earlier in the process. We're just this group doing this project that's impacting all these people's lives or intersecting with their lives, but we don't know them. And then also, I feel like I want to put like a big caveat right? Like, I did a Facebook post about the underreported homicides, and I put underneath it, I was like, I don't want this to be taken as a call for greater policing or greater incarceration.
Right.
Like, that's not what this is talking about. It's not about crime. It's about the city, like, systematically destroying these neighborhoods. And, like, this is one of the ways that you can see that. But it is scary. There's something scary about engaging in these issues that you don't see as much with other kinds of art.
Yeah, I was going to say two things, one of which I remember, is that I like to think about this stuff as action research as opposed to making art. Like, liberating myself from the word art was this massive relief. It's working in communities. It's community cultural production. I'm working with people, and I'm asking a question because I want to know the answer. I mean, even if my question is kind of weak, which is what would happen if, we cover up a bunch of, I wanted to know if people cared about the murals. And of course, it was based on block by block and what parts people cared about versus others. I'm still unraveling the results. It was a really complicated thing. And also, too, it was like this giant gesture and this, I don't know. I still don't know. But it's okay. That's the art part.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure, and time will tell. But it's also talking about violence, like the violence of gentrification, the violence of politicians coming in and taking a community organized, a community generated art form that was invented, a couple blocks away, but initiated sort of like polygenesis in a way, that now I don't know. It's really complicated to find out what the answer is. But also, I forgot my other point.
But what's the feedback been? So what have you heard from people who were not initially engaged in the project? Like, what's the response been?
I think a lot of people were like, what's this? Here's the other problem too. Like, I'm not from here, right? I'm from Michigan, and and from Ann Arbor, Michigan. Too. Yeah, right. I know. This parking is crazy here. I'm from a really tiny town, and so it's dicey asking this question. But you know what? I don't trust people who don't take risks. I don't trust people who don't put themselves out there. It's easy to sit on the sidelines and be like, I have this opinion, But I work with artists. That's what I do. I work with youth. That's all they do is take risks, and ask questions and try things, And so that's sort of like where I'm at. That's what I'm interested in finding out the answers to is, what would happen if I'm not. That's both the safety and the risk, added risk factor. And then, the possibility of screwing up. Just because other people are like, cool project, it doesn't mean it's a cool project. And we've seen that play out in all sorts of ways throughout time, right? I've made lots of bad art. I think bad art's really important too. But
I love bad art.
oh my God, right?
I just love that somebody made it and there was a space for it to be seen.
Yeah. No, I went to Berlin. I was like, look at all this horrible art. There's great art too, but there's like tons of terrible art. It's great.
Yeah. I'm going to open it up to you guys and see if you have questions or comments or responses to Natalie.
I know a lot of artists. I used to work at a museum and arts in town, and back in Florida. And since I've been here and talking about the youth, talking about art school, I know a lot of those who are like, oh, it's all about me. Well, what do you think is going to be? Do you think this collaboration that you're teaching them, they're working together on different projects as youth? Do you see that if they're continuing with an arts mindset and they're like, oh, I'm going to go to art school, do you think that's going to change? They're going to take that collaboration with them? Do you think that's something that this could be a generational shift? No more like rock star artists, you're really like looking for those moments of collaboration. Do you think that's going to happen?
I hope so.
I would love that. Go ahead.
No, I'm just like, as I've been working with youth for maybe about 4 or 5 years, and I still don't understand them. I feel like.
Which is exciting, right?
Sure. I think it's scary, too. There's there's so much going on in my program right now. Yeah, we're repping up.
Yeah, but that's like, to me, I think that's the exciting part. There's this research that says that if people do work in schools or wherever that have them involved in their community, making improvements or just being involved in civic life, public life, that they will go and come back. If they go out and go to school or do whatever, they'll come back and help where they grew up, right? So it's a good investment of time. I don't know. I think that things are shifting. I mean, I think all this stuff that's happening with, community gardens and like real palpable fear of what we have done. We've done bad things. We're in deep doo-doo, right? We know we are. I think that people are gonna have to, I don't wanna get all like, when the revolution comes. But I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking like, where am I gonna get my water? Like, I'm kinda concerned. And the one place I thought I was gonna get it, it just got messed up. You know what I mean? This is serious stuff, talking to my friends in Georgia, like, I'm gonna go there and hide out. I mean, I think we've got some real consequences to deal with what we've done so far, right? Like, all these killings, they're not coming out of nowhere. I mean, they're trying to say they're not even happening. I'm even more alert now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I want to kind of jump into on this topic of like socially engaged art, because I feel like that is more and more like a topic of conversation happening in academic programs too. And I went to a couple of the panels at the College Art Association conference, which I snuck into because I couldn't afford to go to.
Everybody should.
Yeah, $550. I can walk into that for free. So I did.
Call a printmaker, make a badge.
I just said I forgot it. Anyway, I went to 2 separate panels on socially engaged art of different kinds, and one of them was the Critical Craft Forum. And they are talking about craft and art, sort of similar to what we're doing on a national scale. It's prompted by Namita Wiggers, who is the curator for the Museum of Contemporary Craft in Portland. And the other was on socially engaged art, specifically in a fine art setting. And I thought it was really interesting because neither of those conversations touched on one another at all. They used totally different words. They had totally different ideals. They had totally different goals, and they reached totally different standpoints. But they were all talking about the same things, all of the projects discussed by the artists in those panels, which was engaging with the artist and the audience, however that was defined. But it seems like this is a third way of also talking about that, which is the community art and engaging in a community and actually engaging the audience in a much more personalized way, which is so important, and I think with what a lot of that is lacking. So, is it going to be the way of the future? Who knows, but it's definitely part of the conversation, and the failures of that work is definitely also part of the conversation. So,
because I think when you're, dabbling in community things, that the chances for really blowing it, bad art isn't like a private experience anymore. You can really screw stuff up. You can damage children's ability to trust adults because you've done stupid things or said something dumb or went into something without doing your homework or whatever it is. But what's happening too is a lot of I think a lot of people have been doing public intellectual work, right? Public research, community engaged work for years within institutions and been denied tenure, kept at a part-time level, right? Nobody has a way of evaluating this. And I just saw these amazing, massive amounts of files of this tenure track initiative for judging community-based and public work in all disciplines, from psychologists to historians to, we've never had a way to really deal with it, which is why, Andrea Smith was, having trouble getting tenure, for example. So, people who do the most important collaborative work have been struggling for years. So now there's this initiative, right, brought forth actually by special ed educators and arts people to start to bring this around, which I think actually, if we don't have people in leadership positions talking about this, then it's going to make it even more difficult. But I think things are turning around now. I just saw all these papers and I was like, there's a chance. It's going to make a difference. People don't have the vocabulary to talk about it. I don't think they know, because it's vast. The Ivory Tower is this thing, and the public is everything else.
yeah, absolutely.
This was designed to keep these out. separate us. We would work at desks and they would work on things, but now we're working on things at desks, and it's just confusing. I think that's screwing it up, right? Ceramists on college campuses, like, what? Why are you so dirty? It's a contradiction, I think.
Well, and these whole questions of like bringing knitting and fiber arts into the sort of formal art scene, or these things that have been accessible to people and are being done at this community level that are now that our world is forced to engage with in a different way, with successes and failures. Are there any other questions?
I mean, hold on. I don't have a question right now, but I do have a comment. I belong to a lot of museums. I always have. And I was in the artist, where was I? Yeah, Contemporary Art Museum the other day, and they're having a sale on books. I'm just like perusing, and look catches my eye.
Yeah.
The 40,
Hi.
over 40, under 40. The Craft Futures exhibition that was.
Are we in it?
We're not in it.
Yeah, I always ask that myself.
I
too. I'm like, where am I?
I brought this because I just wanted, you can look at it tonight or everyone's here, but the exhibition was put on by the Smithsonian American Art Museum, Rembrandt Gallery, and let's see, it traveled. It was up from July 20th, 2012 to February 2013. And it's got, a lot of these artists I've seen before, a lot of their fiber work, a lot of glass work, all this stuff. And it's, the opening, the introduction is by, what's his name? Douglas Copeland. And it's all about art and craft.
Yay! Thanks for bringing that. Yes.
Sort of a two-parter. Through your community work, do you see people volunteering in other areas? You mentioned the gardens is one thing. Do you see in any other areas, and are the children's grades going up in other areas, in other subjects now that once they get engaged with arts and community-based arts?
Yeah. Well, I would say at Elevarte, we're seeing tons of volunteers. We're connected with DePaul University, and they come out like twice a year and clean our studio for us, and it's really awesome.
I really like that.
Yeah, and so, they end up it's usually really close to a fundraiser, so then they come to our fundraiser and they get to know us a little bit better, and they might volunteer there. As far as the youth having better grades, I think that it is definitely a positive outcome. A lot of our programs are through After School Matters, and so they really want us to have the youth either stay in our program for 3 cycles or within an ASM program for 3 cycles, because they're just showing a way more positive impact. We also have a mentorship program, which I forgot to talk about, which I'm now partially coordinating. And so we're really just matching up youth with professionals and artists in the community. And it's really awesome. We're about to have our first meet and greet this week. And, we have this young person who's really interested in graffiti, and we're pairing him with a graphic designer. Who else do we have? We have photographers and hip hop bloggers. And so really great things. I'm really excited about that.
I know the statistics on arts and grades, that I've seen that are reliable, that I believe are more about retention. No art class, people don't come. They'll come to take advantage of, you don't get to come to the after school program if you didn't go to math. I've had to say that before, as a high school teacher. Also too, I'm more interested in quality of life stuff, because, you might completely blow it in high school in whatever math or whatever these important subjects, right? And then the arts get you through and you barely drag yourself across the finish line, and then you get out and you're like, oh, now I'm ready to study. You know what I mean? That happens all the time. So I'm not really sure. I've had to, I was asked to say, show at which points when you were in contact with our students that their grades made a marked improvement, and I was like, you pencil pushers. But, it is sort of fancy of me to say, in some ways that, we're going to spend all this time and energy on designing arts programs for schools that can't afford like the bare minimum stuff. But, I'm also looking at, I don't even want to get into schools. I'll get all sweaty. Serious stuff, I used to teach right up the street here at Lowell.
There's a community center in Philadelphia, and it's just the fact that they're off the streets and not getting.
Survival is a you get an A for that, right? Totally. Yeah.
Are there any other? Yes, Teresa.
I don't have a question, I have a comment which can take or leave. I'm very new at this, I don't have an artistic bone in my body whatsoever, and I fell into this because of...
Live.
I can't say that to our teachers.
She's a contributor
Exactly right.
to the gallery exhibit that is opening on Saturday.
Yeah, and so they showed me how to do the thing, the little strategic thing, so I felt success, I really did. And when I did my first name, my second name, my third name, some because of the neighborhood were, I'm assuming, were African American, some because of the name in the neighborhood were Latino. And I'm a social worker therapist by trade, and of course my emotions ran high doing that, okay? So after I got over the fact that I'm actually doing this thingy, my heart went out for all these families and these young men and the ages, and after I'm done with this, what's gonna happen, and what if a mom comes, when you see like the news when people go and look at the Vietnam War, and it's really emotional. And then I thought about this African American male with his grandmother stitched, did quilts, blah blah blah, and here's my shitty ass thing here. I was just gonna say, oh my god, okay, that whole, this is one thing. Or, the Latina woman whose grandmother been doing this in Mexico for like forever and a day, and God, this girl, couldn't they pick somebody out? Or would there be this like, somebody remembered my son, all of these emotions just running high, and trying to figure out, I don't know, you not asking your question or asking this, and I'm not just, for me, what is the next step? I can do that little stitch thing, that's cool. What do you call it again?
The split stitch.
Okay, yeah. I can do that now, I can do that with lots of confidence, but these people were very real, just real, and thinking about the families, and I was also reading the warmth of other suns, and just the migration of African American, that, you've got to have, thinking about the quilts that they made, just all this. So it was very enlightening and very provocative. I don't understand, each alderman needs to be here at the opening. Those are steps that we didn't, you couldn't think about at the time that you were doing this, but just to see this visual thing. So that's my comment.
Hypothetically, if you were running an already going program for youth and you found out the budget is really lame,
Oh, it happens all the time.
First thing that you would do to look for additional funding.
It depends on if you need stuff or if you need people. Because because people harvest those co-op students from art schools too. They've got to find places to work. Find the ed programs too. UIC's art ed program just got shut down. But ed students have to bank a bunch of hours. I'm a supervisor. They got to bank a bunch of hours and have contact working with young people. So I think that's one great way to do it. I would call the co-op and internship office at any art school.
And to follow that up, have you any of you had any experience speaking to like a personal alderman about, or the business alliance, the neighborhood, or are those people even worth talking to?
It depends. I was going to say it depends on your
Yeah.
alderman.
And also depends on what you want to be doing, and
If you can keep a straight face when you're talking to them, how much you know about them. It depends. It totally depends. I mean, Also, too, some community organizations, I mean, there is surplus. To me, I feel like so much of what we do is in arts with young people is about identifying surplus, right? And redistributing it, right? I'm all about the Facebook call. Like, I need paper. Now, I don't run into that so much. I just had a real big bounty happen recently when somebody had to clean out their classroom, and I got a lot of material. Yeah, so good. Big bag of wiggly eyes.
Yeah, Zero Landfill.
Oh, Zero Landfill, yeah.
They do an event like twice a year with material for artists and arts programs.
Yeah.
I wanna acknowledge Alavarte's individual donor program. As a professional fundraiser and a donor to Alavarte, they do a really good job of cultivating their community and really, I mean, so every fundraiser thinks that somebody else's fundraising is easier than theirs because it's like you're like, oh, look at these kids, they're making art, they're so heartwarming. But seriously, those kids making art are so heartwarming. You just want your money.
Yes.
I can't. And I think you are touching a lot of lives. You are rooted in your community. There's a whole audience there who wants to be supporting your work, and it's about building relationships and giving them opportunities and always asking.
Yeah.
But you guys do some great fundraisers that I really look forward to.
And I feel like our in-kind donations are just like so high. Once we add it up at the end of the year, we're like, whoa, we got so many $1,000s in in-kind donations. So, I mean, like as a staff, we're always fundraising, whether it's dollars or things. And so we've gotten pretty good at it, asking for stuff.
At
And people just see me and they're like, I have yarn for you in my car. And I'm like, I'll take it. Christina Roque.
So I was like, the old lady down the street died. And I brought all
Do you want this yarn? Yes.
Yeah, there's something to be said about like telling everybody all the time what you need, you know what I mean? And Facebook really, I mean, it works, whatever.
And young people are so good at fundraising if you give them the tools to do it. They're like shameless. They haven't been taught to not talk about money. There's this really amazing young woman from Alaverte who was a sponsor at their big annual benefit.
Oh, yeah.
And she was a sponsor because she had gone around at school juggling 4 donations until she had raised enough money to become the youngest sponsor ever of this.
And then she juggles at our fundraisers.
Yes.
elementary school.
Yes. And
And we're honoring her this year at our fundraiser.
And I cry every time I see her juggle.
Those circus kids are amazing. They're really like they're remarkable. Like I get like nervous when they're doing it, but they're really good at it.
Yeah, they're so adorable.
It's real circus stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, too, like doing really amazing, exciting, odd things or unique things for fundraisers. I mean, I remember the first Pozolada I was involved in, they do the big pozole thing where you get to come in and buy a youth or somebody in the community's made bowl, and then you get to fill it up with food and
with
eat.
all the pozole.
With so much.
And there's
all
like
the
20 people fighting for like who makes the best pozole, which is contentious. And you can decide for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this year we made buttons that my mom makes the best pozole.
Oh.
It's real.
Fighting. Yeah, but then also too, like the first time I was doing that, I was like talking to a bunch of people who were like, I don't do clay. I don't want to, I'm a painter or whatever, and I was like, just come to the thing and we'll have, a bowl that's wet and you can come and do your painting or whatever. You won't get your hands dirty or whatever their thing was, but we called it a marathon, we had 12 hours and it was like this, it was an exciting thing. And so people could just drop in whenever they wanted. We made like 85 bowls that we transported in our car like for 5.
Yeah, I think this last year we had like more than 400 bowls that we made. And it's funny because at work, we're having a stressful day and we keep trying to implement studio time. But during Pozolada, you like literally have to get up from your desk and go downstairs and make bowls. And it's great. You get to beat the shit out of a piece of clay.
And all of you can make bowls.
Yeah.
For free.
I should have brought clay.
And, well, there's going to be embroidery.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't mix.
Um,
I'm messy. Yeah.
but
But yeah, Nicole taught me how to do like lace over clay this summer, and
There's
that
a
was
lot
really
of good
fun.
stuff between the embroidery and the clay.
Yeah, we had
lot
lots
of
of ideas
potential.
this summer that we still have to bring to
Yarn
life.
molds.
Yeah, we're like, yeah.
Yeah. Yo, there's some good ones, yeah. And then taking a slab and then rolling an embroidered piece over it and then pulling it off and then firing it, you know, and then you can rub the stain into it and it looks like you knitted the bowl.
Oh my god.
That was crazy.
That's
The
gonna
implications are
explode.
nuts. Silk screening and yeah, that was crazy.
Pies.
And then there's what you can cook in them, right? I know, the pies, yeah. So I think that's part of it too, is having like a, you know, I mean, this Pozolada is like one of the most exciting socially engaged art projects. You know, it's collaborative, it's food oriented, it brings in the grandmas, which is almost like my measurement, right? Are they here or are they not?
They're here, but they're trash talking the pozole.
Right, right. Yeah, but that's super. And if there aren't like a little pack of children running around, I don't really want to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, and the bowl making is a space, like a regular community space where people of any age can come and make art, no questions
Yeah.
asked.
I feel like
any
a
skill
lot of
level.
adults are introduced to Levarte through our bowl making.
Yeah.
And and that's exactly what they see. They see youth and families, and then they come to the Pozolada.
Yeah, clay teaches itself too. It's really forgiving and loving.
True.
I think we have time for one last question or comment.
I have a question. I'm not monopolizing. Do you have any interaction, and this is for anybody else who's working with community organizations, with the museums in town? And I only ask that because when I worked at the museum in Florida, my job was I was the outreach coordinator. And so I developed an outreach program for community centers that didn't have art programs. We would take an art reproduction, we'd go from the museum, we'd go to the community center with all the right materials. Like say we do like a
Right.
still life or something. You talked about still life, do a still life, and then the following week they would come to the museum for a tour and they would actually see the work of art.
Oh, cool.
So is there any type of stuff
Can
like
I
that?
actually speak to that? I'm the teaching artist for the Smart Museum,
Oh,
Cool.
and that's the
Alright.
program that we do.
Oh,
Oh, cool.
It's 3rd and 5th graders. They come to the museum, then I go to class,
Awesome.
so on and so forth.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know that they do at the Art Institute.
I was just curious.
But that's,
'cause I-
yeah, but that's at the
Yeah.
University of Chicago.
I mean, we work a little bit with the National Museum of Mexican Art. I wish we worked a little bit more. But I feel like, you know, there's so many great organizations in Pilsen that we're just always collaborating. And we offer a lot of in-school programs. So in the spring is when we send all these great artists. And right now we're doing video, photography, clay, circus. We're doing all of it in the schools. I will say though, like the downside to that is, you know, I feel like just people want it, because we're so small, and I feel like people are just like, yeah, let's jump on their bandwagon, and so they want to collaborate on our Dia de Muertos, and they're like, well, what if your Dia de Muertos procession ends at our place? And we're like, no, that's our crowd, you know, like, so yeah, there's people who we've really had to learn to say no. I feel like that's one of the biggest things I've learned. You just have to nicely say no.
Yeah, that's the pitfall.
Yeah.
People
That
building
is
their
the
own
big-
cultural capital and the
Mhm.
whatever other people's work. Yeah, I don't know about museums, but I think it's interesting here that the National Museum of Mexican Art is in a park building, and y'all are in a park building, and so there's something. And then Art Institute of Chicago is in a park
I
building.
know.
That museum is a park. Because I work for it, and so I get into all the other ones that are park buildings for free, that are in Chicago technically. So I found out which ones are and which ones aren't by being like, oh, what? I gotta pay. So I find out that way. But it seems to me that a lot of museum ed programs aren't funding their, I will just say, and then I will stop, that they are not funding their programs very well, considering how many, you know, assets we know that they have. I mean, God, look at the collections.
I mean, I don't know, I just thought about it because I thought, you know, for myself, my own work, having worked in a museum, you know, it was, you know, the whole thing about our program was not only to go into different communities and have a presence, but then also letting the kids know that the museum is a place for you. It's a place outside of your community or inside your community, but I mean, the museum where I worked was really outside of everyone's community. So you had to go there. But it was this museum having the museum as a place for you to go, and learning how to do that as a kid. It's like, oh, well, should I go to the mall? You know, what's a fun place for me to go with my family? Can we go sit in the dark in a movie theater, or can we go and like wander around the museum grounds and hang out and see my cool painting that looks like spaghetti? You know, whatever. You know,
Yeah,
so
not get yelled
it was
at.
Right.
That whole,
Yeah.
But it was, you know, having kids in a museum helps everybody. It helps the people that are always, I'm a member, I'm a patron, seeing kids in the museum, because they need to see that's the future of what you're paying for. It helps the guards get off of their, you know, chill it out, you know. And then it helps the kids too, because they're like in this environment that maybe they're not used to being into. And they're like, look at all this cool stuff here.
Yeah.
I live in this city and this is for me.
Yeah.
I can come here.
It should
Well,
be
see, I
free.
have two things to say to that, because I feel like we go to the National Museum of Mexican Art a lot because we can walk there and it's free.
Right.
You know, when I have my act together as an instructor, I do the field trip to the MCA or the Art Institute, where we can get in for free. So we did a photography field trip downtown, and here I'm like in my dorky head, and I'm like, they're not going to want to go to the Art Institute. We're walking in that direction, and I was like, you guys don't want to go here, do you? And they're like, yeah, we do. And like most of them had never even been. And so, you know, there I was kind of reciting my art history to them, and they're like, whoa, Thelma, like, you know a lot. So, yeah, I guess I forget, sometimes that, you know, there are all these cultural spaces, and why it's, like, as cool as they, or over it as they may seem, that you really just have to take them there and do it.
Well, and the National Museum of Mexican Fine Art,
Mhm.
I think, does a really good job of being a part of its community. I mean, when I think about like how many people in this room have had work shown there, I mean, they do a really good job of creating a space for community artists, or at least from my outside perspective. I love that it's free. It feels really accessible compared to other museums in Chicago.
Oh,
Well-
yeah, and I'm sorry.
No,
The
no,
other
you go
thing I
for
was
it.
going to say is that we, there's a small gallery just down the street from Elevarte that, you know, a collective of people are now running. And so in the past, I feel like we've had our closing showcases for the students, and we've just piggybacked on the Carnaval celebration, which is a bunch of kids running around in costumes, and it's fun and it's beautiful. But the teens' artwork doesn't get showcased. And so we got to show our work in a gallery that's pretty similar to this in size. And like, man, those teens just owned it. They were having a party. You know, one of them jumped on the iPad and was playing DJ for a minute. And, you know, the families were there, and it was just amazing. And, you know, the next day, one of my students wrote how, you know, she's really been wanting her photography to be taken seriously and to show people that, and how much she appreciated it. And, yeah.
Is it still up?
Yes, it's
How
up for like a
long is it?
month.
Where
The
is
month.
it?
It's at 1900 West Cullerton.
And what gallery is it in?
It's actually, I don't know if it's Calles y Sueños or Cultura and Pilsen. They're like in between two. If you find either on Facebook, you will.
Are they changing
It's the
their
same
name?
place. Yeah, I think it's a new, like, it's a collection of people. It's like Gozamos, the Festival of Latin Electronic Music, Contratiempo magazine, all under one roof.
Cool.
Better together, right?
Yeah, there you go.
You know, you can go in a museum and count the number of teens and like divide it by square footage or something, and like determine how, you know, they treat the teenagers. The Walker Museum's really great in Minneapolis, and they had this like cat video exhibition.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, they always have so many teens. I'm like, what? Oh, the cat video show?
No. How did we miss it?
See, like, right, and they had the guy that supposedly invented the meme or whatever, and
Oh,
he came and
that's
did the
fun.
talk at the MCA. Like, that's where you're gonna get people to show up, because it's alive. It's not, you know, super contemporary. I love that stuff. Yeah, there's ways to do it.
Cool.
So one of the things we really wanted when we were organizing all of this is that it wouldn't just be talk, that there would be time for making things, since making things was why this is happening. So we're gonna break for 10 minutes or so. People can snack and drink and Then we're going to come back together for an embroidery workshop or general sewing circle time, because some of y'all already know how to embroider. But first, I want to thank our brilliant panelists and all-around awesome ladies. Thank you guys.
Yes.
And of course, we'd love to see all of you on Saturday for the opening of the craftwork exhibit.
Yes.
All of the walls will be
This is
covered
Boston.
in fantastic art that we've collected. We've got 13 artists, many of whom have been on panels during the craftwork panel series. This is our last event, but there are already 2 of the panel discussions up on YouTube. If you go to our website, which is on the postcard that's being passed, we've got plenty of. And so feel free to check those out and get involved with craftwork. We're gonna keep doing craftwork things, we think, after the end of the exhibit. So
Forever and ever.
and ever. So yeah, if you didn't get a postcard before, come and see me, and otherwise feel free to hang out and get some snacks.
Tina's so cute.
This is Claudia Merchon, because she's
amazing.
so good.
I was
Look
gonna
at her
say,
embroidery
like
is.
that's better than my handwriting when I try.
I know.
Yeah, I know. She really.
And I love the heart too.
Yeah, me too.